The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. It's Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. We're on the road today. At least half of us are at Fremont. And what a gorgeous facility as we are hunkered down. JV baseball on the road again. Southwest against Fremont. Elijah, it was an adventure getting here. And so I'm driving. Mama's riding shotgun. Junior's in the back seat. And we have apparently three different MapQuest traffic directions going. And raise your hand, not if you're driving, of course, if you've done this where your lovely significant other says, well, we need to get gas. I'm like, oh, we're good. We'll make it. We'll make it. So we have the wrong coordinates punched in. Not operator error by yours truly, but just the info given to us. Here's the field. Half of the team played up here as JV during the spring. Half of us have not. So we're trucking along. I think we hit the South Dakota border and then made our way back. And we have 2 miles left, 4 miles to go. And it's dark. We were wearing sunglasses, and we had a half a pack of cigarettes. Long and short, we got to the gas station, but I mean, I could see her scowl through her glasses, her sunglasses. And I guess the good news is she won't be talking to me during the game or on the way home. So it's halfway a win. Great to be with you at Hail Varsity. We're loaded up today. It is fullback camp day. The off-tackle Empire has some takes on the Nebraska football 2023 outlook. Elijah Herbel is celebrating his Denver Nuggets. He's too proud to probably pull out the Rodney Rogers jersey. I'm sure the Mutombo jersey's framed at home somewhere. Maybe the Dan Issel headband and jersey from yesteryear.
I have like a kid-sized Carmelo Anthony jersey that's somewhere. No idea where it was. I had it because it was. I got the twofer for Christmas one year. I got a youth Joe Sakic jersey from the Avalanche, and then I got the youth Carmelo Anthony jersey, and they're both locked away in a box somewhere. I'm sure maybe they were taken to Goodwill years ago. Who knows? But somewhere I have those. I swear I have a picture of me in one of them to prove it if anyone doesn't believe the long and arduous years it's been for me being a Nuggets fan.
Did you not opt in for the Allen Iverson jersey? He was with the Nuggets for a sneeze, wasn't he?
Yeah. He made it to the conference finals with Melo that one year whenever the Lakers went and beat him in, I think, 6 games. Then he was there the year after that as well whenever the Spurs eliminated them in the conference semifinals. So do you share
Jokic's disdain for victory parades?
No, I wanted to go, and I don't think I'm going to be able to pull that. I don't think I'm going to be able to pull a show Wednesday while you're gone, make it to the parade Thursday morning, and still somehow make it back to Lincoln for a show on Thursday afternoon. I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to pull that off. I've been trying to do logistics, and I'm like, well, the earliest I can make it back to Lincoln is 7 p.m. on Thursday, so. I say you just post up in the Lodo after the victory parade and just do it from one of the breweries or dispensaries down in the Lodo. I'll do it from a dispensary, and the show will be completely incoherent.
And it would match a normal Thursday. You'd be okay. Just avoid any gunfire for drug deals gone wrong.
Well, hey man, we're gonna talk about Husker football today, man. Like, great.
And they're like, yeah, sweet. So congrats to Elijah's Denver Nuggets.
Congrats to you though. Staking a beer bet for you.
I know it covered. Great teams that are runners up in the NBA Finals cover. Thank you much, Jimmy Buckets, for making sure that thing stayed at 9 or below. So I'm all even with Elijah for the steak and the beer bet. We'll spend time with Mitch Sherman in about 15 minutes. Mitch will join us from The Athletic. Really enjoyed his story the other day on the recruiting angle, signees that got away, busts, and also the best signee for Nebraska. That's pretty intriguing. Nebraska's got a Notre Dame transfer that's on his way back. Barrett Leibentrit will take two swings at that. He's coming back home, which is great. And you know what? Nebraska's going to be taking all comers here. And you had the COVID season for Barrett, and the Scott talent wanted to find his way back to Nebraska. He did that. He's a walk-on transfer, and that is good. His plan is to return to fullback. That is a theme, and that is what helps make offenses make you feel them, for lack of a better term. That's part of that physicality, and Nebraska wants to get back to it. So Mitch Sherman here in about 10 minutes. Jim Walden, longtime coach at Iowa State, of course, an assistant under Coach Osborne, played for Devaney at Wyoming and then joined Coach Devaney's staff at Nebraska. So, gentleman Jim, going to join us at 5. And then Jeff Smith will join us, Hall of Fame basketball coach with Southeast. And also with Nebraska basketball, a lot of prep kids that are on the radar for Division I offers on the hardwood. So we'll get some thoughts from Coach Jeff Smith around 5:40.
And I got to ask him what he thought about that Nuggets victory last night.
Well,
I'm still on cloud nine.
Yeah, no, Jeff loves the NBA. He's a Celtics guy. Coach Smith is also still really close with Ty Lue, and he's had a chance to see a few of the LeBron years in Cleveland under Lue, some of those practices. So Coach Smith's a really good voice for the NBA. 489-1240. 489-1240 is how you get in. You can email Chris at HaleVarsity.com. To jump into some of the more national commentary on Nebraska football, the 2023 Husker football preview out from Off Tackle Empire, and below the headline here, it says this: it's hope that kills you. It's hope that kills you. And that is an accurate painting for so many Nebraska fans. It's not that they're not excited about Rhule. I think there's a lot of Nebraska fans that are excited about Rhule, and they should be. And I know I've always been positive with the 75 hires since Frank. I'm optimistic in that way. Okay, this is the reality. This is your head coach. Let's give XYZ the benefit of the doubt. And in your heart of hearts, there was maybe some reservations on some of the coaches, but not all of the coaches may be working out or not working out. Bill Callahan, pro to college, pro to college, didn't know if it would work. Worked for Pete Carroll. It's worked for Nick Saban. It didn't work for Bill Callahan, more so because of how young they were in 07 defensively, and it was time to go. I thought Bo was a good hire. I know the rough edges and the sideline demeanor was always a constant battle. You had administrative change. You had not furry, but really uncomfortable handcuffs put on Bo by administration. They wanted him out. And that's what happened. Mike Riley, good coach, really well respected and liked coach. And you're like, and you didn't upgrade. You didn't even break even with your new hire with Mike because he was going to be shown the door at his own place, a place he really helped build in Oregon State. And then you go with Scott, and it was 90-10 with the folks you talked to about the hope and hype taking over your head. Here's why we want it to work. Here's why it may not work. I mean, it wasn't even a vocal minority. There were some naysayers and reservations out there by people that are trusted with college football when you talk to them just kind of off the record. And it didn't work out. Maybe he's a better coordinator. Maybe he'll be more mature second time around, whenever that is. Maybe he just is a family guy. Who knows? But with Matt Rhule, you've seen the work, you've seen the work ethic, you've seen the attention to detail. But Hope seems stymied a little bit, not because of Rhule, but just because of where Nebraska's at. It's another change. Folks are afraid to get hurt again, Elijah, to just go all in, blind faith. Yes, this is going to be great, just because of the past missteps, and you get your hopes up, and then Lucy takes the football away.
And what feels different, though, about this season, and I understand where people come from, it is the hope that kills you. I think that's been a theme on our show here before. It's the hope that kills you. I think that was last summer. We were talking about the Husker football season last year with all the different changes. It's the hope that ends up killing you. Very true. But what feels different to me with this Rhule situation, to just go down a different route than what we've hit over the past couple of months, and I kind of take it back to some of the conversation we had around when Matt Rhule was hired, was this truly feels like Nebraska not only learning from their mistakes, but accepting where they are as a football program.
Good take.
Because after Bo Pelini, it was, let's learn from our mistakes. We don't need the sideline antics. We don't need a guy who's going to go crazy on the sideline and make a fool out of Nebraska. We just need a guy who's a basic bare-bones football coach. He isn't going to provide any unnecessary drama. He's going to be someone that the state of Nebraska can like. And truthfully, the state of Nebraska liked Mike Riley as a person. As a guy, he fit in with the state of Nebraska. But he didn't work stylistically from a football perspective. So Nebraska turned around and said, maybe not understanding where they were at the time, you know what? We need a guy who gets Nebraska. We need a guy who understands what a Husker football team needs to look like and can bring us into the modern era. And that's Scott Frost. He's been here. He's done it. He was a player under Tom Osborne. If anybody gets how to return Nebraska to that place, it's Scott Frost. Now, I think through a couple years of that, you learned what Nebraska needs is not a return to the 90s. That's not going to work. That's not what college football is anymore. Nebraska needs a guy who understands how to orchestrate a complete rebuild. Nebraska hasn't had that ever, maybe dating back to Devaney. When was the last time Nebraska had a coach that needed to undertake a full rebuild of a football program? Because Pelini,
it was Devaney.
I mean, Pelini didn't undertake a full rebuild after Callahan. He took Callahan's players and turned them into a different stylistic football team. And then you have Mike Riley, who tried to completely flip that style on its head and bring the West Coast to Nebraska. You have Scott. That wasn't a full rebuild either. That was, we're going to get my fast players in here and we're going to make the Big Ten adjust to us. This is now a new head coach in Matt Rhule who understands where Nebraska is at. He's turned around lesser programs in Temple and Baylor. He understands what it takes to accomplish a rebuild, and he's going to bring his modern style of coaching, what he's learned in a couple different stops, and meld it with what has worked at Nebraska. It's not about returning Nebraska to what it was. It's about taking bits and pieces of what Nebraska was that can still work today and meld it with where college football is at. That's what feels different about Matt Rhule to me, and time will tell whether or not this pays off for Nebraska, but it feels like Nebraska finally understanding where they are as a football program. Where they are as a football program is a basement dweller in the Big Ten.
Well, you said it perfectly, and guess who gets that? Trev Alberts gets that. Trev knows that. Trev gets it. It hurts Trev to look at it, but he's very real. He's absolutely very real, and the record indicates that.
Well, it's a difference between, it felt like previous years, it felt like, oh, Nebraska's down on its luck. A change of scenery, a new face will help Nebraska break out of this slump that it's in. It never fully accepted the fact this isn't a slump. This is who you are. Right now, who Nebraska is a sub 500, 3-9, 4-8 football team. That's who Nebraska is, and it feels like Nebraska has finally accepted that. It's not a Band-Aid. It's not, okay, we're gonna bring back the 90s to Nebraska and put a Band-Aid on what the bigger problems in this program are. It's Nebraska taking a good, long, hard look in the mirror and saying, we need somebody who can tear this program down to its foundation and build it back up anew.
Well, and it's somebody that will instill winning habits within the foundation. You look at Riles, and he was just a bad fit. It's too finesse to work and win in the Big Ten. And then from a coaching and attention to detail standpoint, you were over your head because you were just not seasoned enough as a coach. quite honestly, with Frost. So the swag and cockiness is out, and the hard work is back in. I mean, that is the identity for Nebraska. You've got a fighting chance with Jeff Sims, but above all, I think from administration to head coach, the long look in the mirror is going to cause some humility. Nebraska's been humbled. It's been humbled for a long, long time, and they're going to do something about that, where they've had to sit down and reassess, take some personal inventory, and from an administrative leader in Trev Alberts, who's going to be the guy that can get the fundamentals right that win ball games in the Big Ten. And yeah, who's going to be the guy that brings in and coaches up a team not only for some depth, but also brings in the right guys that are willing to out-tough the other guy across the line for 4 quarters and be able to dig deeper in that 4th quarter. So it's an understanding that is in unison for Nebraska football now. But pretty good preview by Off Tackle Empire. We'll spend some time with Mitch Sherman as I am in Fremont for some baseball. Elijah Herbel back in studio, smiling about his Nuggets. Mitch Sherman's next. It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency, on the road in Fremont this afternoon. Elijah Herbel back at the studio. Did you spill your championship champagne, Denver fan, on the rejoin there?
No, we have technical difficulties with some of our rejoins, so I'm going to get that sorted out here.
All right. Well, punch the computer and pass the potatoes. We welcome in Mitch Sherman, joins us from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, how we doing? What's going on?
Doing well. Just enjoying this lovely Tuesday. No big plans. How are you?
I'm good. We finally found the ball field here in Fremont. Phenomenal facility. Mitch,
Fremont.
When it comes, when it comes to road trips, have you ever pushed the empty recognition on your car too far as to where your wife would not speak to you?
Wait, what did you ask? Are you talking about running out of gas?
Yes, I was. That big E staring at you on the console where it says you have 2 miles of gasoline left. You have 4 miles to go.
You cut out of me there in the middle of the question, so I wanted to make sure you were talking about gas. So there was an inclusion of something about your wife, and I was unsure what exactly you were referencing. But I have done that, and my wife was not with me, fortunately. It was a work road trip many years ago, and I was working at the Omaha World-Herald, and I was with fellow Nebraska baseball writer Kurt McKeever from the Lincoln Journal-Star, and we were supposed to cover a Nebraska at Wichita State game on the road on a midweek night back in the glory years of Nebraska baseball, and it was important to get to the stadium to cover the game, and we ran out of gas on the exit ramp that was to take us to the road where we would then drive to the stadium. So it required a walk, a kind of a walk of shame. It really is a walk of shame when you're carrying the gas tank in your hands, walking back to your car toward the interstate. So yes, purchased a little tank inside the Texaco station or whatever it was there in Wichita, and filled it up with a gallon of gas, walked it back to the car, and I think we made it by the end of the first inning.
Well, hey, you didn't miss much, but you got your workout in too, which was impressive to haul that gallon of gas back. But I'm sorry about that. I was fearful that was going to happen.
It was a long time ago. Yeah, so you made it. You didn't run out of gas.
We didn't, but she will not be. She's not speaking to me. I think once the ball game starts and then probably on the way home. But that's okay.
I don't understand that. I mean, you had it completely under control, it sounds like to me. I think you should be commended.
Because we made it?
Yeah.
See, exactly. I love that take. Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. Mitch, a lot to get to with Nebraska, and we can go a lot of different directions, but I want to focus in on a story you posted yesterday on The Athletic. I love talking about the recruiting rewind with you, and you looked at different recruits, those program changers, the highest rated, and, of course, a recruit that just didn't pan out, and then the one that got away. Your one that got away, Hurrdat Media. Gosh, man, I remember that recruiting chase. I remember he ended up at Oregon. He had a great pro career. Nebraska got his cousin, Mania Brown, and I think Mania ended up transferring out, but Mania was supposed to be another beast on the interior. I love your Hurrdat Media take. My not suggestion, but my one that got away. I'm going to go back to Donovan McNabb, just because he was right. He was right there, and I think he maybe got turned off by one former head basketball coach about playing two sports, but putting it nicely.
Danny just, if he had an opinion on something, there wasn't really any way to suppress it. So that was, and often that was the greatness of Danny Nee, was that you knew exactly what he was thinking. And then in a situation like that, yeah, I've heard that too, and I think that holds up, that he didn't say exactly the right. He didn't back up the message that was coming directly from the football coaches, and that may not have been the reason that Nebraska lost Donovan McNabb to Syracuse, but I think it was a factor. I wanted to go with a defensive guy, and that's why I picked Nada, because I had, and that's not a good reason, because I mean you can say they I should have picked a defensive guy for another category. But I was loaded up as I made it through writing that piece with quarterbacks and running backs, and those are the guys that you remember the most when you look back at the history of recruiting. But I didn't want it all to be offense. I mean, it would have been very easy to pick Emmitt Smith or Barry Sanders, or like you mentioned, Donovan McNabb. I thought about Lamar Jackson, the quarterback, not the DB, who did not get away, but. Yeah, ultimately I looked for a defensive guy, and they're just all over. I mean, pretty much all of these categories, and we had the best development story, we had the biggest recruit modern era, the biggest recruit pre-internet era, so the most impactful recruit, which is different than the biggest one, and then the one that got away. Oh, and there's the biggest bust also, which was the most difficult one for me to tackle, because I didn't really like putting that label on one player. So I looked more for a player who was representative of an era that was a bust than a specific player who didn't pan out, because those things are, they involve injuries and off the field stuff, and it's not always the player's fault. I don't think that's something that one person really needs to carry around, being called the biggest bust in Nebraska football history.
Mitch Sherman's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio, and Mitch, whenever you talk about quote-unquote busts, do you include, and I guess I'll throw recruiting this in here, do you include guys that came to Nebraska, didn't quite pan out, and end up going elsewhere? I mean, I know some of these guys are before the transfer portal era, but guys such as Aaron Green, running back in Nebraska, didn't quite pan out, was stuck behind Amir Abdullah, goes off to TCU and has a great career, guys like that?
Yeah, in fact, the guy that I picked, he played just 1 year and then part of another year at Nebraska, and I'll let people go on and look at the story. I'd recommend that. But as I said, he was representative of an era in a class in Nebraska football history that became very much forgettable, and one that Nebraska fans have wanted to forget. And it was at the very beginning of the transfer portal era that he left. In fact, I think he may have left in just like the weeks before the portal became a reality. But so he had to, in fact, sit out, I believe, at his next school, and went on and did some nice things and was a good player, but was, to be a bust, obviously you have to be a big-time recruit. You can't be a two-star who comes in and doesn't work out. So you limit the pool right there to 4- and 5-star players, and certainly Aaron Green, you can categorize him like that. He didn't pan out at Nebraska, and then went to TCU and did some really nice things. I think more to do with his situation. It involved the fact more that there were very talented running backs around him at Nebraska than it did him being a bust, him, not cutting it, not getting it done. You had Abdullah and you had Rex Burkhead in that era too, who were two of the top 10 backs in program history. So while Aaron Green, may have come in and started multiple seasons at a different time, he got caught up in a numbers game in a playing time situation. I think that's what led to his transfer and ultimately a very good career at TCU.
Mitch Sherman's with us. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Mitch, going to go to baseball here. A couple of minutes left. Reaction to Rob Childress as he has been promoted to pitching coach. Mike Sirianni, Nebraska able to grab him from Wichita State, and both are going to be part of a new look staff for Will Bolt next year.
Yeah, college baseball, of course, is on our minds this week with the CWS starting Friday in Omaha, and big issue in the sport for a long time has been the addition of that third full-time assistant, and that's why Will Bolt, with one departure, is able to add 2 full-time coaches. And everybody knows Childress and the impact that he can have, and he is one of the best pitching coaches in the country and established head coach, of course, from his time at Texas A&M. So that's a boost for Nebraska. It should help the Huskers in recruiting, and of course, he's going to step right in, and he knows these guys who they have who are returning on the mound, and I'm sure knows the players who are incoming as recruits too, since he's been with the program for 2 seasons. But Sirianni's the one that intrigues me, maybe more because of the unknown factor, and just because he was at Wichita State, where they've gone through a coaching change and have 20-some players in the portal, including some good ones. And I wonder if maybe there's an in there with Sirianni where Nebraska can land some talent that's departing Wichita State and immediately impact the program in a good way, in addition to what he brings as a coach.
And Mitch, I'm going to leave this open-ended before we get you out here. Your reaction to the Jordy Ball situation?
Yeah, I mean, the other shoe's still got to drop, but I think she's going to end up in Nebraska. I think that's the expectation, and it's just if that happens, it's a massive moment for Nebraska athletics. Obviously, for Nebraska softball, the impact on the field and what she can bring as a pitcher, it makes Nebraska a Big Ten championship contender, and she would bring just instant credibility. Allow Rhonda Revelle to use that. I mean, Rhonda Revelle probably she would need like 4 phones with as many calls as she's going to want to have to make to bolster the roster with players who would like to play behind Jordy Ball. I mean, she's the face of college softball, and that's not it's not an over-exaggeration after what she did in the Women's College World Series the last 2 years. So, that has to happen. She's for this to be the big moment that it can be for Nebraska. She's coming home, and she said she's coming home, but she hasn't said to which school. Again, I completely expect that it's going to be the school in Lincoln, but until that announcement comes and she's in a red uniform, then there's some question. Very little question, though. I would again say. So I expect that to happen, and it to be a great moment because she's coming home for the right reasons. I mean, you read her statement and see what she has to say about wanting to give back to the softball community in the state of Nebraska that gave her so much, and she left Oklahoma on, you couldn't have been better terms. This is not one of those transfers where there's a lot of vitriol and animosity. I think, whatever she does on the softball field, if it's in Nebraska, this is going to be the most high-profile player probably ever to wear a uniform in Lincoln, which is a pretty good thing for that program right now.
Mitch, have a good week. Thanks for a few minutes today, bud.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Mitch Sherman with us from The Athletic, Hail Varsity Radio. We're here in Fremont getting ready for JV baseball. Some infield by Fremont. They have not seen the coaching staff make Junior run the foul poles yet, but there is hope that can happen. Elijah, you look, as I watch you on video, can watch the show, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Big thanks to the folks here at Fremont for letting me post up here. Are you all right, or are you still just buzzed from last night's Denver win?
Next question. Let's.
So you are not going to speak ill of others?
Of anyone who may have deleted all of my rejoins on the day we're doing a show? No, I'm not going to speak ill of that.
Okay. All right. Well, We'll send a text message. Well, you were supposed to move them.
I'm not sure anyone told me that.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure anyone communicated with me that they would be deleted by today.
Yeah. I will pass that along.
Yeah. So fun Tuesday afternoon for me here in the studios, as we're going to make the most of it without any rejoins.
Well, all right. Moving forward, the topic of busts, self-made, and, of course, best recruits. A great story from Mitch. Where were you at as a Husker fan with the bust discussion? And I know Mitch was very respectful with that term, because that hurts. That hurts guys who go to the NFL and are labeled busts. That hurts kids that are 5 and 4 stars or seen as saviors to a program, or that difference to put so-and-so over the top of a program, and it just flames out. It just flakes out. And Mitch nailed it where it's beyond just one thing. 2 names come to mind. One is Harrison Beck. Harrison Beck, stud quarterback, throw god, I think. Is he still on Instagram under that?
I don't know, but I remember him.
Is he still doing YouTube videos? And the guy had a great arm, but I think Nebraska took him over Mark Sanchez. Maybe it's just recruiting lore. But to me, Beck is one of those guys that comes out. Amir Abdullah is a guy that absolutely came in as kind of an under-the-radar guy that a lot of SEC schools loved but wanted him at defensive back. Tim Beck's like, dude, come run the football for us. And immediately Amir came in, changed his body, and was fabulous. And the fact he was able to step in and fill in at such a high level for a dinged Rex Burkhead early in his career was great. And then to have that 1-2 punch of Rex and Amir, phenomenal. And they really, in a competitive and respectful fashion, pushed one another to be really, really good backs behind a really good offensive line. Ndamukong Suh, he was not quite a 5-star, but I put Suh up there with probably a little more hype than Marlon Lucky. And what I say with this, and I know Marlon was a 5-star out of North Hollywood, but when I examined it, and I remember that recruiting class, I look at Marlon, and I know Marlon was good, and I know Marlon was wanted by the SCs of the world and LSU, and SC had 4 more Marlon Luckies on their roster in that running back room. But Ndamukong Suh, I mean, it came down to Oregon State and Nebraska, and Suh played well early enough to get like a 5th-round grade with minimal starts. This is right after the, I believe, 07 season. So he could have left as a redshirt sophomore and still gone in the 5th round or 4th round or maybe even 3rd round. Then you saw what he became with Bo and Carl. And to me, Marlon was good. No way was Marlon a bust. Was he Amon Green? No. Email from Todd as he sends an email in, chris@hailvarsity.com. Todd, his bust is Marlon Lucky. I wouldn't put Marlon under that bust category, but I think the hype was a little too tall for Marlon. And I thought he had a really good career. I thought he was pretty integral to the offense. Thought his junior season was nice. Now, to Todd's point, I don't think Marlon was the best running back in that room. I think you got to go with Brandon Jackson. And for whatever reason, Marlon got more of the carries. But when it came to gut punch time, Brandon was in there, and Brandon was very, very impressive.
Yeah, and it's kind of, as Mitch laid out, it's tough for me to put any former Huskers as like into that bust category because there's so much more that goes into being a college football player. As you laid out, like Marlon Lucky walked into a difficult room. He walked into a difficult situation with where the Husker football program was at that time. Because like I think of busts off the top of my head. I try to go within the past decade, and you go Keyshawn Johnson Jr. and Tristan Gebbia.
Yep.
These guys truly busts.
I don't think Gebbia was, but I don't know that Key Jr. was. Man, I mean, every celebrity, or I shouldn't say every, but a lot of celebrity / legacy names, they aren't their pops. They've never been their pops. If you go back to the UCLA going after Snoop Dogg's kid, I mean, they're just not their dads as far as the drive and difference making. And that's okay. But man, Keyshawn was maybe more of the Pied Piper get, right? You get him, so a lot of other dudes will show up. You know, the guy that from a national standpoint turned out to just not a good dude. I loved talking to him. Remember Buki
Radley Hiles,
right? And I remember ditching a Christmas program early so I could go get an interview with Buki. Says a lot about me as a father. Forgive me.
And he speaks to me as, he didn't end up at Nebraska. He ended up at Oklahoma.
No, but he was bad at Oklahoma.
And he's a guy that strikes me as a bust because he got a full 4 years of opportunity, never quite developed in the way that you thought he was. He was still, through 4 years of college, all about himself. I mean, you heard that from post-game interviews to his social media presence. Like, that's a guy that I would be more comfortable throwing into the bust category because of the amount of opportunity he received at a school like Oklahoma, where there's other guys around him that are developing, yet he can't seem to make the next stride in his football playing career. That's one that is easier for me to put in a bust category than someone who had a lot of things that he couldn't control going on off the field. Schmidt, we still have you?
Yep, I got you back now. But no, with Buki, I mean, they played him as a true freshman, and they still kept playing him as a true freshman. He lost his starting spot. He just could not tackle in the Big 12, and then he transferred to Washington, and it didn't get any better for him. You know, the guy got a great education, and I hope things are going well for him. But he's a guy on a national scale. I mean, he was the chase, man. Now, Nebraska was all in on Micah Parsons and lost out. That would have been a monster get. We'll wind down this first hour. Hail Varsity Radio. We're on the road today. We're in Fremont. Hail Varsity presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. As we're winding down this first hour, Jim Walden is coming up here a little bit after 5 o'clock. Get his take on Nebraska, the Big Ten, and also what happens with the Pac-12. Good stuff from our recruiting talk. Crew chimes in with, from a legacy standpoint, Steinkuhler, yes, was a 5-star out of Southwest, really talented, and they moved him over to the defensive side of the ball, and I thought he had a really, really good career. Reminder about your friends at Dyer Law. Congratulations to Dyer Law, the team. They took fight in front of a federal jury Last week in Omaha, after days of testimony, the jury awarded their client $3 million in damages, which is huge, and you can trust your team at Dyer Law to help ensure that your rights are protected and you get the settlement you deserve. Call Dyer Law today at 402-393-7529. Visit Dyer.law to chat with a trusted professional about your claim. That's Dyer.law. Dyer.law, 402-393-7529. Todd able to come back with some facts, which is really important. Jonathan Stewart was the number one running back in the recruiting class. Marlon Lucky came in. Marlon Lucky came in as the number two running back in the recruiting rankings. I think Marlon was 05, if that sounds right, 04, 05 for Nebraska. Marlon did too much statistically to be a bust. Was he five-star great? No. Was he Mike Rozier great? Was he Lawrence Phillips great? Was he Amir Abdullah great? No. So that argument is fair, Todd, as far as the hype versus the production. But when I go bust, I mean, the production just is pretty much a no-show or a non-contributor is a big part of that with me. Remember Jamal Lewis, running back for Tennessee? Jamal Lewis was the back Nebraska faced. He went on to win a Super Bowl with Baltimore before being a very bad citizen and boyfriend in an elevator. That said, Jamal Lewis was on the hook for a visit to Nebraska. Tennessee ended up getting him, but Nebraska was on the verge of following the Amon Green era with Jamal Lewis. Nebraska was on the verge of following the Tommy Frazier era with Donovan McNabb. You want to know one of the best gets ever? We talk about Amir Abdullah, and Amir Abdullah is absolutely top three. How about Zach Taylor? What happens with to Nebraska football without Zach Taylor if they don't strike gold at a JUCO in Kansas? Because then you do truly turn the keys over either to Joe Daly or you turn the keys over to the throw god, Elijah. There's not enough bourbon in America to get you through that 3-year span. You need a cigarette and a hug, don't you, Elijah?
Yeah, it's been one of those days. I tell you what.
Well, at least I'm gone tomorrow. That's one way to celebrate. If you're not watching Elijah, he's going to punch the wall the next 10 minutes between the end of this commercial segment and our interview with Jim
I'm going to leave the room during the break to do some breathing exercises.
You're going to go goose fraba down the hall. Hour 2 is on the way. Jim Walden, Hall of Fame coach. Thoughts on the Big Red. Coach Jeff Smith to talk NBA Finals. Hail Varsity, Hour 2 on the way.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it at Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. We welcome in Hall of Fame coach Jim Walden at Iowa State, Washington State, and then, of course, played for Coach Devaney, coached with Coach Devaney and Coach Osborne. Coach Walden, you remember being in Fremont ever? That's where we're coming to you from. A little bit of a road show today on Tuesday.
Oh, that's great. Oh, yeah, I've been out there in Fremont. You know, we used to do those Husker things all over. I don't know if they still do. Most of them don't. But we did those corn husker, what was it, some kind of summer deals, and we were in all the cities in the state, I think, at some time or other. But, yeah, I've been to Fremont several times. What are you doing there? Just moving for beat the monotony?
No, my son plays JV baseball, and they have a baseball game that gets going right about now, so I can take my show on the road and watch him stress me and Mama out when he gets on the mound. So,
well, that's great. He's able to do that. You're able to do that. It makes fun.
I bet. So were those Husker tours with Coach Devaney and the coaching staff a lot of fun? Did you have a lot of camaraderie with the coaching staff?
Oh yeah, they Coach Devaney was probably one of the most pleasant after dinner speakers, joke teller that you would ever know. I used to tell everybody, and I mean this sincerely, he could be the toughest, most competitive man in one setting, and then put him in another one, and he could be Duffy Daugherty, or he could have been Bob Hope. He just had a great feel for how to make people feel good, what to say, how to say it, and like he used to say all the time, it doesn't hurt that we're winning ball games. So, but yeah, he was the best, Smitty.
Jim Walden's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. I get a feel of really strong communication, Coach Walden, from not only Trev Alberts, his athletic director at Nebraska, but also Matt Rhule. There's a lot of national writers that have covered Rhule in his time at his different stops, and now he is so gracious with his time around the community. Tell me a little bit about that experience, not only the Saturdays in the spotlight, but the job that is the PR side of it as a head football coach.
Well, a lot of it had to do with the difference of times. That's why I'm very pleased to hear that Matt Rhule is extending himself some, because the modern-day guy who makes so damn much money anymore doesn't do it. I guess maybe in the days when none of us were making, even Coach Devaney wasn't making anywhere near the kind of money that his record would be paying him in today's market. But he was so genuine with his time. Like every Friday night, Chris, they had a press thing. And if it was a home game, it was always out at the American Legion Club where we all hung out. And that's where we'd go after the games on Saturday night, and people knew it. We'd gather out there to have dinner and hopefully celebrate, which we did more than we didn't. And it was just a joyful time to be mingling with people. And Coach Devaney was the best at it. He had no problem with shaking people's hands and was saying hello and being a part of the community. And I think the Friday night press conference thing, I think they had them nearly in every Big 8 school. The Friday night prior to a home game, they had a press media thing. And Coach Devaney and us coaches would go to those things. They'd ask you questions, and it was just a real open forum where it was just one of those things that was. And then the press from that made the people reading the newspapers and the reports coming from the radio people. It just made it so much more interesting because it was so right up to the date.
Jim Walden joins us here at Hail Varsity Radio. We're talking some college football, some thoughts on Nebraska. Coach, I want to get your take on the Big Ten West, and I know you keep an eye on it with your radio show. And just to you, what, if you were to give me a grade, how would you grade the Big Ten West on an A through D scale in comparison to some other leagues? I asked that because our dear friend Tom Chattel had a column Sunday and used the term slumming, and it was not taken well by a lot of folks that are Big Ten West alum. That said, in the context he used it, he's like, look, I'm used to Nebraska competing and winning big games and competing against the Florida States, the Miamis. You know, when Nebraska was at its power, when you guys were there also. I mean, you were taking down Bama. You were taking down Notre Dame. Nebraska's had their world shook up really post-Pelini, to be honest with you, in the Big Ten West, where everyone's kind of had a shot at Nebraska.
Well, yeah, you know, if you go through Coach Devaney, then you got to involve Tom with that too. You know, Tom was sensational, did a great job for his 20-year tour. And then Frankie also was doing the same thing. It was just the kind of in the family, so to speak, carried through, maintaining the building and the winning and the tradition. And it went right up through until the end of Frankie, in my opinion. And then it kind of has gotten bad. But looking at the whole Big Ten West, I laugh because, let's face it, last year it wasn't great on that side. And but this is all a new year, and I think you need to look forward as to what new coaches will do, what will the improvement be. You know, I don't think that we. I wouldn't I wouldn't have called it slumming, but I would have said it was in a lower part of town. You know, if it might have been, it might have been a better acceptable speech, because I think our article, because no one could argue that last year's West Side Big Ten was anything but on the dark side of town, or on the other side of town, so to speak. But that doesn't mean it's going to be there this year. And I've looked at the Nebraska schedule now that it's out. I have every reason to believe that I believe strongly in Coach Rhule. I think that the people of Nebraska don't need to get their hopes up. Well, you always want your hopes to be up. That's the wrong statement. But just don't get out of sorts with your expectations in terms of what you think he can do in the short term. He can't make better athletes in the short time that he's got it. He can improve what's there and bring a few good ones, add some new ones into it. But you're stuck with what you had. He'll do the best, and hopefully his staff that he has put together will make them all better. But there's only so much time you've got to get that done. But that being said, I look at the schedule, Chris, and I can see Nebraska being – I'm going to be so bold as to say I think they can be an 8, maybe a 9-win team. I don't know who they can beat. I don't know who they'd lose to. But I just look at the teams they're playing and who they're playing where. I'll give them all 3 non-conference games, and after that, it's just going to be a race to see if you can you win 5 of your next 9, and that's how I see it. I may be overreaching a little bit, but just looking at the west side that they played on, I don't know why I wouldn't pick that.
Coach Jim Walden's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio, and Coach, as you're looking at this turnaround of Nebraska, what's been in the news today is that Matt Rhule was hosting a football camp specifically for fullbacks on campus today, inviting guys not even that played the fullback position, but maybe guys that think they could have a future as a fullback at the next level, bring them down to campus, trying to give them the ins and outs of the position. And I want to get your reaction to that what is old has now become new yet again as Matt Rhule tries to bring the fullback and the fullback position back to the Big Ten as the Big Ten transitions into this new era.
Well, the new era is going to bring back some fullbacks, so get used to it, because that's where when Nebraska was its greatest, there was a big old fullback sitting back there, and there was also a big tight end on both sides, or on one side for sure, and both sides sometimes. Believe me, I had to play them. And so you've seen the cycle go through now. We're about to finish up on this wide receiver crap. I mean, I've seen all the 4 wides and 3 and 1s and 2 and 2s. I've had a butt full of that, if I can use that term. And I think you're going to see some fullbacks coming back. You're going to see some tight ends starting to pop up again. Even Washington State's all of a sudden got 4 tight ends. I about fainted when I heard that this spring. And so I just think some of that era of putting all the emphasis on the quarterback has got to come to an end. And I knew it was going to in time. It's been a great assessment. It's good entertainment. I used to say it's a great offense if you don't have very good football players. But in the end, the teams that win championships have tight ends, they have fullbacks, and they play hard on defense. And when you look at Nebraska through, I'll say our years, the black shirt, all the way through, You look at the black shirts when they were the original black shirts, when they shut you down like you were not anywhere around. And then you had Bill Olds, and you had all the fullbacks that been there, and great tight ends. So look back at the gravy years and say what was the most common? Great defense, fullbacks, and tight ends. So I think Coach Rhule is on the right track, and I would say while you're along with that with those fullbacks, maybe bring in a tight end or two. And another reason why that's a good camp is because fullbacks make good offensive guards. Yeah, you can always convert them.
Go hit the training table about 6 more times, son, and we'll put you at guard. Was that what you're telling me, Coach Walden?
Well, yeah, a 6'2", 225-pound fullback is not that many steps away from being a real good center or a real good offensive guard or maybe a real good tight end. So that's where the meat and potatoes of most teams used to be, is a fullback and tight end position.
Couple more minutes. Jim Walden with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, I want to get your take here on the outlook for the Pac-12. I know TV deal is pending. I know there's some thoughts about Washington and Oregon maybe looking around, maybe Utah and the Arizonas and Colorado go back to the Big 12. What do you think happens with the Pac-12? What's your prognostication?
Well, number one, I think all 10 of them are going to stick together. I don't think there's any question about that. I don't blame any of them for putting out a rumor or a little feeler that we could be, because everybody has to protect itself. I don't feel bad because anybody might say Colorado, but look, Colorado left the Big 12, so it could work with the Pac-12. I don't see it going back. I think it's very comfortable where it is. And all of this could change, and any one of these teams could leave. But I think Washington, Oregon doesn't bring anything to the table in a sense of the Big Ten because of travel issues, and there's just so much of that you can do. And they've already got 16 teams, for goodness sake. If they get any more, you might as well just call it your own nation. So, and I think that goes for all those teams with that. But I will say this. I think the Pac-12, and here's my opinion, Chris, for what it's worth, and I'll give it, I think the two teams that they need desperately to bring in to calm all this down is San Diego State, which would give you the southern half of the L.A. market and then all of the Southern California area. It's a good school and a quality place to go. My pick is going to shock you. My next team of choice would be Las Vegas University. Do not go to Texas. You don't need Texas anymore. You don't have to have that. You've got all the teams you need right out here in the Pac-12, and then you say, why Las Vegas? Well, Las Vegas pretty quick is going to have 2 pro teams in the same city. It is one of the fastest growing cities in the country. When you play Las Vegas in Las Vegas, every Nebraska fan that can get on a bus, train, or car will try to go there. But if you put the same group trying to go to Colorado, half of them will go there. And so I used to ask a question. If I got a plane, I can put 400 people on a plane, and you got 2 choices. We can go to Salt Lake or we can go to Las Vegas. Raise your hands which one you want to go to. Oh, Las Vegas, 400 fans. So it's going to be a place where all championships are. Just think about it. You can hold a championship in Las Vegas, and nearly everybody in the state will want to go there, no matter who you are, Nebraska, Iowa, it doesn't matter. So my choice for the 12th team, for the team where everybody wants to go to play their championships, especially on the West Coast, is Las Vegas. Now, you might have to hold your nose at the present time when you say it, but you go ahead and say it anyway because it's going to be the next big city, the best gathering spot for a conference. And if Pac-12 doesn't get it, the Big 12 will take it, and they'll take it in New York second. You watch what I tell you, because all of a sudden you could have your championship game in football, basketball, women's basketball, soccer, and everything else that you want to in Vegas, and everybody that can will go there to watch it.
Jim Walden with us, Hall of Famer with Nebraska, with Iowa State, with Washington State, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, keep on hitting them far and straight on the golf course. Always love catching up and talking some ball with you. Thanks for your time and your accommodations today.
All right. Well, good luck to you, son, and keep them. Tell them to hit those long drives. People really like them. See you later, Chris.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Elijah has dug into the deep tracks to bring you back from commercial. I like it. Send your requests to DJ Elijah. That's Elijah at Hurrdat.com. And big thanks to Jim Walden. That'll be on the podcast portion. Can get the whole show or just parts of the show you want to hear. It's that easy. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel at Schmidt_radio at Herbal Essence. For Elijah on Twitter, can watch the show, Hail Varsity YouTube channel and the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. I confused Jamal Lewis for Ray Rice. I have publicly owned that screw up on Twitter. 489-1240, 489-1240, the numbers to get into. So we'll spend some time on the NBA Finals and also some of the area prep players that are getting D1 looks and also D1 commitments. Trayson Anderson from Pius, another really talented player off the board. Still in this debate on, I'm not debating him as a bust at all, Marlon Lucky. Todd, our friendly emailer, Common Sense Todd, I think that's his title, is adamant about Marlon Lucky being a bust. Was he the greatest running back recruit ever? No. Was he five-star worthy? Probably not. He got misevaluated. And the high school he came out of, North Hollywood, was the equivalent, and this isn't a knock, it's just an equivalent to a C1 or a C2 school in Nebraska. He wasn't out of modern day, let's say, for example. So I'm going to defend Marlon on that hill, Elijah. But speaking of hype, have you spent much time and energy on the baby Gronk story?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Do we have to get into this? Oh, man.
No, I'm just asking. You're...
I have opinions. I have strong opinions on it.
I know, and I man, you took the Lord's name in vain there. You are really, really irritated that I even brought this up.
And it's not Baby Gronk. I have no problem with Baby Gronk.
The kid's 10. He likes Twinkies. He doesn't show emotion, probably because Dad's going to grab the belt and go to town on him. I mean, the poor little 10-year-old's being shopped to every podcast and video stream and digital platform there is. He's probably a really good 10th. What would that put him at, 4th grade?
Late elementary school. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably a really good elementary tight end. He's one of those tight ends that don't have to wear the "you're too fat" jersey like some of us did. That's a me thing. It sucked being the tight end on Leon's midget football team and not being able to go out for a pass.
Well, this is the problem is like, just because you're a fat, unathletic 5th grade football player or 6th grade football player doesn't mean you can't end up being a great football player. And just because you're a great football player in 5th or 6th grade doesn't mean you're going to go be a great football player late in high school or into college. Like, it's so crazy that this dad is trying to build the great athlete, the next Rob Gronkowski, whatever you want to call it, in your kid that hasn't hit puberty yet. Like, what are we doing here? There's so many unknowns. Like if this kid ends up being 6'6", 260 pounds, yeah, sure, he's going to be an awesome football player. Look at his dad, though. His dad's not very tall. For all we know, this kid could end up being 5'10", 190. Mm-hmm. Good luck getting a D1 offer doing any of that. Like, it's so crazy when you're taking him on recruiting visits. Are you kidding me? Taking pictures in the Kentucky jersey and the Purdue jersey. First off, crazy that the school would even have them there anyway. I know you want to get your numbers up and your social team is, oh yeah, man, we can do so great off Baby Gronk. The people love Baby Gronk on TikTok. It's crazy to have a kid out there in the first place because you are setting his expectations way too high in life. Like, you're a 5th grader playing football. You should be out there to be having fun. Like, take it seriously.
Learn the game.
Yeah, learn the game. You can take it seriously once high school rolls around. If that's what you decide you want to do with your life, awesome. as of right now, like, wow, this kid just ran through like an arm tackle of a kid that played Fortnite for the past 20
another
hours.
10-year-old. Yeah, he ran through the arm tackle of another 10-year-old that he outweighs by 40 pounds. So baby Gronk and dad Jake are exploiting his child. He's exploiting his child for money, for content, for visits, for hype. And this kid's going to either end up hating his father, end up hating football, or both. Or if he does grow up, he may rip his father's arm out of his socket and beat him over the head with it. This screams LeVar Ball to me. This screams Marv Marinovich to me.
That's where I was.
Did you ever
going.
watch
The Marinovich Project, 30 for 30, one of the best they ever made.
Did you ever watch that?
Of course.
Yeah. Marv Marinovich. I mean, get in the gym, son. I mean, poor Todd had copious amounts of blow before he ever had a McDonald's hamburger.
Well, I mean, like we're talking. If I remember correctly from the documentary, the 30 for 30 we're talking about here, the Marinovich
He lives
Project.
in a van down by the ocean.
Well, it was like
painting pictures.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure he lives a great life, and it's probably a life that he actually wants, which is awesome for him. And I wish he didn't have to go through all the toil of being a kid in that household, because it was like, as a sixth grader, you're waking up every single morning at 5 a.m. and dad's hopping in the truck and we're running in front of the truck, and if we slow down, dad's going to run us over with the truck.
Dad's going to hit you with the pickup.
Like, and in a more serious note, like this is really common. Like, Jamal Murray had a story after game 3 of the finals. He sat down with Malika Andrews because he had that really, really bad court burn on your hand, if you remember that. And she asked him about that. She said, like, is that going to affect you moving forward? And he told this story, how growing up in Kitchener, Ontario, my dad used to make me do full deep squats, and he'd set a teacup full of hot tea on each of my legs. That teacup would burn my legs, but it would be worse if I moved the squat, because then this hot tea would pour all over my legs. Like this is, it's more
torture.
Common than it should be. It's torture. Like, all of these parents are doing this to their kids, and yeah, you'll occasionally get the Jamal Murray, but for every one Jamal Murray, you're going to have 20 kids that are going to hate their parents for the rest of their life, because you know what? Jamal Murray had some natural drive within him and some natural God-given genetics within him that allowed him to be an NBA player. Was it because his dad was making him shoot free throws in the snow in Ontario in the middle of January because his dad wanted him to learn how to shoot free throws when he couldn't feel his hands? Maybe. Is that a part of it? Was that necessary for Jamal Murray to become an NBA player? No. Is it necessary that you take your kid across the country to do college visits and turn him into a TikTok star so he can go be a Division I athlete? No, it's not necessary. It reminds me of something that Jabba said to us a couple weeks ago when he was talking to his son about baseball. Hey, now is the time in your life to be a kid. Go to prom. Go hang out with your friends on the weekend. Baseball is meant to be something that is fun, and if you have a future in it and you want to have drive to go do that, there is time for you to go do that. There is time for you to go off and make baseball a full-time profession. But while you're a kid, baseball is not a full-time profession. Basketball is not a full-time profession. Football is not a full-time profession. It's so crazy to me that there's all these parents out here that have decided that because their 9-year-old says he wants to make it to the NFL, they're going to make it their life's goal to get their 9-year-old into the NFL. Trust in God. If God has a plan for your kid to be in the NFL, your kid will be in the NFL, and you can help them out whenever that time comes. But you don't need to be torturing your kid mentally and physically through their upbringing in order to get them to the NFL. If that's what it takes, it's not worth it, because your kid's going to hate you the rest of your life.
Well said. No, your job is to be supportive, be the adult, and not exploit. Be a parent that has boundaries, has strict codes, and just be a parent that is there physically, spiritually, mentally for your kid. But don't pimp him out, for lack of a better term. And that's what's going on. It's disgusting. Look at me throwing rocks. This is pretty good.
Schmitty, we have Lee on the line here before you get to that.
All right, we'll get to some of the comments here in the stream. Can join this stream, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio at Twitter as well. Lee, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Good show, guys, as always. I caught this a little bit late, but I'm pretty sure I got the gist of it. As a former school teacher and coach, you guys are exactly right, and I mean exactly right. It's a kid, it's a child, it's a young person. They don't need to, run up hills over and over and over and over again, or shoot free throws in the snow. Although I have to admit I did that. That's because I wanted to. My dad didn't go, put hot tea on my legs when I was doing squats, that sort of thing. Just a quick example. When I was in 6th grade, a really good friend of mine was the smartest kid in our class, the best athlete. He moved out of town. Didn't see him for years later till we were in college, and lo and behold, I was better than him. So that's just my quick response, And he was still a great guy, but he hit his peak when he was like in junior high, and so you can't know what's going to happen in the future. Have some fun when you're in your teens playing high school or Legion baseball or whatever the sport is. Thanks for your time, guys. You got it right on the money. Thanks.
All right. We appreciate you, man. Good phone call.
And he's got a great point. Like, yeah, I went out and shot free throws in the snow because that's what I wanted to do. It's a fine line between helping your kid do what they want to do. Does your kid want to go outside and train? You can go help them train, sure. Or are you forcing your kid to get outside and train because you want them to be an NFL player? And you know what? They said it once 2 years ago. They want to be an NFL player, so I'm going to make it my life mission to do that. It's about understanding that life is bigger than sports or the NFL or whatever goal you have for your kid.
It's great to have a goal. It's wonderful to chase something. And it's okay as a parent to suggest, hey, dude, you've kind of cranked out video games long enough. Maybe go get off your ass and find your way into the batting cage. Mm-hmm. And then eventually that message will come through. And it's just a suggestion. It's not gun to head. Go train now, Junior. No, but you got a lot of talent you've got to compete against just to see time. Okay, so put the work in, and that's what's rewarding. That's what's gratifying when they put it in themselves because they love it. Mm-hmm. They really, truly love it, and then they get to see the payoff, or at least get the opportunity to have some payoff there. As Southwest gets hosed at home in a bang play, but yeah. We'll talk a little bit about this. He's going to make his
son go do some more running after the game tonight.
No, that wasn't Junior at home. keeping with the baby Gronk story. We'll talk with Jeff Smith next. It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity.
We'll get Coach Smith's take on some things. Jeff Smith with us, Hall of Fame coach from Southeast and assistant at Nebraska for a lot of years. Coach, how's your summer going? Thanks for a few minutes.
It's really good. It's going pretty darn fast, but I'm in Phoenix painting my son's new house before he moves back from England. So trying to stay indoors as much as possible right now.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the is he ready for that Phoenix heat? I know 81 degrees was making people keel over in England earlier this week.
Yeah, they've had a little heat there. They actually went to the beach last weekend and said it was 85 degrees and enjoyed it. So kind of unusual for England, but I guess that's prepping them for Phoenix.
I like it. Coach, we'll get your reaction to Jokic and Denver's championship in a moment. I want to get your perspective on this baby Gronk story. And you've got a 10-year-old that's finding every podcast and digital platform because of his father. And his mission is to get his kid a scholarship. And they've actually been touring some college campuses, calling his kid baby Gronk. And it's really exploitive, says the judgmental parent with the headset on. That's me. But Coach, you've coached a ton of kids. You've seen a ton of summer ball. you've seen kids, and I'm not asking for names, I'm not doing that to you, but you've seen kids have their experience ruined by people in their family, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely, this feels like exploitation. Maybe the kids enjoyed it. We don't know, but it's gonna put a burden on this kid for a long time. And sometimes, I've had guys I played against at the NAIA level, and they think their kid's going to play in the NBA. And I kind of look, like Elijah said, kind of looking at the dad like, you were kind of limited yourself. I don't know, unless your wife was 6-footer or whatever, it might be a little tough. But yeah, with today's social media and all the avenues that people can promote their kids, it gets a little tiring and a little worrisome to me that those kids. My squats were water skiing out at the lake in the summer sometimes. Can kids go to the lake and hang out anymore? That kind of goes with the Java vein a little bit.
Yeah, I totally get you. And they got to be kids. They got to have fun. You got to put the work in, but within reason, to be honest. And there needs to be a life sport balance.
Yeah, and like you guys touched on, if the kid doesn't have it in him, it's not going to happen. The kid has to have it in him. You can have. I've seen a lot of kids that have a lot of talent, and they mature early in the 6th and 7th grade, and they're going to their parents think they're going to be a phenom, and they hit their growth spurt early. They've already got hair on their legs, and they've kind of peaked out by the time they're in 9th grade, and then other kids are passing them. It's tough on a kid. And especially if they've been promoted so much, that makes it tough on the other side of that, on the downhill side. It makes it kind of tough on kids. It's tough sometimes.
And my take is just this. The kids that are going to be real high-level athletes someday, they're not the ones that are working at it 24 hours a day from the age of 9. They're the ones that have a work-life balance, or I should say a sport-life balance, are able to be kids. And then guess what? Whenever it's game day, they're still able to go dominate. Those are the ones to me that always, or I shouldn't say always, but end up being your really high-level athletes, the ones that don't have to try that hard at it.
I agree. I think balance is the key. I think with all the select teams and things, I just worry about kids giving up sports by the time they're in high school because they've had their fill of it. We used to look forward to every game because you didn't get as many. You played a few summer league games, but not that many. You didn't go play fall basketball. You played another sport, and then when it was basketball season, you got your opportunity. You loved playing because you just weren't burnt out on it. I just kind of worry about kids today being force-fed too much.
Jeff Smith is with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, reaction to the Nuggets, Jokic. Is Denver done? Are they built to be more than just a one-hit champion?
Well, I think if you have Jokic on your team, you're built for pretty good success. And it looks like a lot of their guys have contracts into 27, 28, or 25, 26. So they're going to be there for a while. And I just thought their bench was fantastic down the stretch here too. Miami was the epitome of a hot team in the Eastern Conference Finals. They were making threes. They had a lot of confidence going. They had guys coming off the bench. And then it kind of flipped where they just didn't shoot it as good in the final, and Denver took them out of some of that stuff. And then Denver's bench with Brown, I guess it is, and some of those guys really played well for them and just outplayed Miami's bench. And then with Jokic was the first NBA player to lead in the playoffs in scoring, assists, and rebounds for the entire playoff this year. That's an unbelievable accomplishment. He's a special player with a special attitude. And if you watch the post game, just the humility that he had. And I think we're used to seeing Michael Jordan and Kobe, and that it was all about winning. It was all about winning championships. That was the only thing. I don't think it's that way for Jokic. I think he's happy for his teammates. He likes playing. He wants them to be successful. He did his job and got him a championship this year. He's ready to go home. Just kind of a different attitude for a guy that has just the skill sets that he has and the body that he has to go along with that. He's a special player, and he's not that old, and he's going to be around a while. I'd sign him to as many years as possible if I'm Denver.
And with Jokic, it's not there's been the thought out there, well, this guy doesn't even like basketball. Look how he responds to a title. It's the guy who doesn't want to be a star. He's playing basketball in order to put food on the table for his family, to provide generational wealth. He's not there for the stardom, and championships are nice, but at the end of the day, like the basketball is not the be-all, end-all in his life, and I think that's a good way to tie it together with what we're seeing with Jokic and what we're seeing with baby Gronk. Jokic, he loves basketball, don't get me wrong, but he is able to put it in perspective and understand there's more important things in life than basketball.
Yeah, and you have to love basketball to be as skilled as he is. He's put the time in, but that doesn't mean he's just living it. We talked about balance. Obviously, he has balance in his life with family, and home means a lot to him. And but they got a lot. Jamal Murray had a great series as well. They have a lot to go with him. Like I said, Bruce Brown, Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon, I thought defended really well throughout the series on a guy that just tore up the Eastern Conference. Aaron Gordon was just fantastic defensively, and then Michael Porter Jr. is just getting better and better. So a really good core, and then when your bench comes in and plays that well, that leads to a championship around Jokic, who's really, you look at Nebraska's Fred system that he used this past year, and Denver with Jokic kind of around the top of the key free throw area, distributing, screening, diving to the basket or picking and pop, kind of similar type systems, and hopefully, Rink Mask can kind of do that thing for Nebraska.
Coach Jeff Smith with us. Coach, hang on for us. We'll get some prep thoughts from you on the other side as we wrap up a Tuesday. Jeff Smith continues with us. Hail Varsity Radio. I'm up in Fremont. Elijah's back in studio. We'll wind down a Tuesday, and we're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Roadshow Tuesday, Hail Varsity Radio in Fremont. JV Baseball this afternoon. Elijah Herbel back in studio. Chris Schmidt, a reminder to get buckled up. Hands on the wheel, eyes and mind straight ahead. The driver has one job, to drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Coach Jeff Smith continues with us. Coach, let's talk about some of the prep talent. We know Doetzler's off to Creighton, and we know Connor Milliken's headed to Dordt. And you have Trayson Anderson, the standout from Pius, committing to North Dakota State. Reaction to that real quick, Coach. Got about 3 minutes or so with Trayson's commitment, and then also a thought on Pekorski and Jaden Jackson, also Sandlin L. Those are three names out there, Coach Smith, that still have a landing spot to find.
Yeah, you and I were fortunate to do quite a few Pius games this year and get to watch Trayson play, and he's got a really, really good skill set. I don't think he shot the ball like he's capable in talking to his coaches. I compare him to a Josiah Alec. I think he's a very similar player to him, and I think he's got a big upside. I think he could be a Sam Griesel and go to North Dakota State and learn and prosper and grow and then, be a guy that could transfer back to a bigger school and contribute. I think he's a great kid and has some length and really has a good post-up game and will develop a perimeter game and could be a really good player for North Dakota State. And like I said, maybe, grad transfer somewhere later. And then it's also exciting that Bane got Dax going to Colorado and awesome. We've got offers with Frager and Love, at Southwest. Omar Bynum's another name we got to watch for at Omaha Bryan. He's played well in some of the summer camps and tournaments, and his name's coming up a lot. 6'8", pretty strong power forward type. I love Jaden Jackson at Bell West. I think he's a prototypical guard that can shoot it and defend and really a complete player. So, a lot of really good players. It's nice to see Lincoln kind of go through the cycle of having some Division I players. It's been a while.
Sandlin L., is that a guy that you think could also make that jump to a Summit or beyond?
Yeah, I think he could. I think, there's always the consideration of prep school. Dak was going to go to prep school, I think Sunrise Christian, and then Colorado and Colorado State both came in and offered, and of course you got to jump on those. And I think Sandlin L. and guys like that could definitely benefit from another year or a JUCO situation. And but he's got length. We saw him make some threes. He can run. Definitely with his body type, I think he could be a summit level player or higher someday.
Coach Smith, a thought on Pekorski out of Gretna. Is he a guy that, what are you hearing, or what are the feelers out there like? Real quick, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I haven't heard much on him. I just like how solid he is. And the thing I love about him the most is he makes plays at the end of the game. He is a kid that you put the ball in his hands, he's gonna make that shot 8 times out of 10, and he wants that shot, and he's athletic enough to hold his own. I think he's a really good guy. You could put it in the corner and he could shoot it in the hole.
Jeff Smith with his Hall of Fame coach, assistant at Nebraska, talking some prep basketball and how some of the summer offers are out there and some of the summer commitments that have happened. Coach, enjoy Phoenix. Thanks for the time today. Always appreciate it.
You bet. Get some gas before you go home, buddy.
We will. Elijah, hold it down, my friend. Thanks for everything.
Talk to you next week.